CubeSat initiative, which we worked with Moorhead in designing and launching CubeSats, and what's now going on with the International Space Station. As many of you know, a couple of years ago, we had an opportunity to start building some technology for space station, and that led us into a completely different pathway, which I'll talk about in a second. And the three organizations that are part of this enterprise are actually four. One is Moorhead State University, Kentucky Space, which was the first organization we all created with Ben and others, which is a nonprofit company, the Exomedicine Institute, which is a nonprofit research institute, and then thirdly, which we created last year, Space Tango, which is the for-profit commercialization arm, and Twyman Clements, who's in the room today, is the president and CEO of Space Tango. He actually also started working with us as a student.
One of the things that's really taken off and beginning to gain traction over the last several years has been in the whole area of exomedicine. We define or think about exomedicine as the research, development, and commercialization of medical solutions in the microgravity environment of space for applications on Earth. And what does that really mean, and why is that important? Well, as you might imagine, we have a very poor understanding of living systems, and in particular biological systems, physical processes, and disease processes in the microgravity environment of space. And we believe through exomedicine that understanding that in a much deeper way is going to lead to a much more fundamental understanding of a lot of those processes on Earth that is going to and can lead to significant breakthroughs for new kinds of treatments and interventions on Earth. And interestingly enough, Kentucky is in the forefront of this whole endeavor. Exomedicine, the coining of that phrase actually happened from Kentucky. While we didn't invent microbiology in space, we have been a leader in taking that and capturing that and really focusing it very, very heavily and very specifically on applications on Earth as opposed to astronaut health. And we like to say that we're more focused on the 7 billion people down here than the 6 people up there. And Kentucky, again, is a leader in this, and we believe is in a position through a lot of, in cooperation with a lot of other things going on in aerospace at Moorhead State University and the other universities and the Space Tango and Kentucky Space, to really emerge in the very, very near future as a true global industrial leader in an important area of entrepreneurial space.
The actual moonshot is wonderful, inspirational, poetic, beautiful, involved great technical challenges, genuine heroism. It brought the world together. But think about the Polynesian islander on the dugout canoe, deciding one day they were going to go that way. No one had ever been that way before. No one even knew if there was anything that way before. It was amazing, and it changed the world.
People can set their minds to magical, seemingly impossible ideas, and then through science and technology, bring them to reality. And that then sets other people on fire, that other things that look impossible might be accomplishable.
Galileo is such a hero, in thinking big, and what he represents to me is both curiosity and wonder that humanity had, that he had, that pushed him and drove himself to invent and work on the first telescopes that allowed us to see the moon, and here we are.
These aviation pioneers were figuring it out as they went. No one really knew how to build an airplane, right? No one knew how to fly an airplane. It was amazing and crazy and wonderful, and they wanted to explore.
Many years ago, the great British explorer George Mallory, who was to die on Mount Everest, was asked why did he want to climb it. He said, because it is there.
There's so many challenges in the world, and you could feel daunted by that, and sort of oppressed by that, or you kind of say, how might we think differently about this?
Everyone else in the world is working on that next 10%. If you can be the one that delivers that 10 times improvement, you have a chance to really change things.
If you want cars to run at 50 miles per gallon, fine, you can retool your car a little bit. But if I tell you it has to run on a gallon of gas for 500 miles, you have to start over.
You need a lot of courage in this work, and you need a lot of persistence. One of the things that's really critical is not only having the courage to keep trying every day or thinking big, even if you don't really 100% believe it's possible, like you might think this might be possible, have the courage to try. That's how the greatest things have happened.
You don't spend your time being bothered that you can't teleport from here to Japan, because there's a part of you that thinks it's impossible. Moonshot thinking is choosing to be bothered by that.
We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
Humanity's progress has been a series of amazing, audacious things, from the very small and personal up to the great, big, and grand. And we are a species of moonshots. And to me, that's like the really amazing, poetic, and inspirational thing.
I think our ambitions are a glass ceiling on what we can accomplish.
When you find your passion, you're unstoppable. You can make amazing things happen. It's been true through all of history.
I believe in the human spirit, and I believe that there are always going to be crazy people who will get out of bed one morning and say, you know what? I think I can build a space elevator, and let's go and do it. But I think that if we become afraid to take these great big risks, we stop inspiring people. We stop achieving things. And the biggest nightmare scenario is that we won't have what it takes to solve the really big challenges.
When Kennedy said that we would put a man on the moon, it's about the fact that he said, we don't know how to do this yet, and we're gonna do it anyway. And that sends chills up everybody's spine. Because if that happens, what couldn't we do?
So as you look at these images, that's the big issue, that's the big question that we have challenged ourselves with over the past several years as we developed and began digging deeper into this whole issue about what do we understand about living systems and disease processes and microgravity, and the answer is very little. And we pose this question to ourselves and to others, and that is, what if the next medical breakthrough isn't in fact on the planet Earth? What if it is in microgravity? When you go to microgravity, as you know, all physical and biological systems are scrambled. So you don't really understand what the fundamental difference is and what's going to happen. As we began to investigate this and began looking at this whole issue of microgravity investigations, we were actually somewhat surprised, and that we didn't find a lot of information, very little research, and very little understanding about how these systems and disease processes operate in space. Most of the work that had been done to date, and even today, has been done on astronaut health, which is an important issue, and we certainly can learn a lot about that. But as Twyman Clements likes to say, and Ellie liked to say, we're not so focused on the 6 people up there as the 7 billion people down here. And what we discovered after about a 2-month process of going all around the world and talking to some of the smartest people in medicine and biotechnology and biomedicine and even NASA, is that fundamentally we don't understand how these systems and disease processes in particular operate outside of gravity. For example, we don't know how cancer cells operate once you leave gravity, how the structure changes. We don't understand how certain kinds of diseases, diabetes, other kinds of things like that, cystic fibrosis, which we're doing work on, all of these various things we don't understand. We spent an entire day with the Dana-Farber Cancer Institute a couple of years ago with the president, Edward Benz, and his 5 top people, top cancer centers, and one of the top cancer centers in the world, and they said basically we have never thought about cancer in the absence of gravity. Just last week, Twyman and I spoke at the Massachusetts Biology Organization annual conference in Boston, where they brought together 300 of the top companies that are valued over in excess of $1 billion. MIT, Harvard, Boston College, Princeton, all came together in over 2 days to talk about biotechnology. And in that, we gave a talk on exomedicine. Of all those people, again, we found almost no one in the entire room had really grasped this issue of what do we understand and what does microgravity offer us. Every time a new physics environment has been captured, has been exploited in the history, from magnetism to vacuum to electricity to radio waves and now microgravity, it has led to an explosion of new knowledge, innovation, and ultimately capital. And for the first time, really now, because of new access to space, through the private sector coming in like SpaceX and Orbital and others and Blue Origin, and more importantly perhaps, the rapid continued miniaturization of technologies, which are a lot of the kind of power that are in your iPhones, we now have the ability to build and design very, very small technologies and R&D platforms in space that can do amazing things that simply weren't possible 5 to 8 years ago. And a lot of this was really started by Bob Twiggs when he first came up with the idea for the CubeSat, which was a very, very small satellite, which people thought were toys and kind of chuckled. And now everybody in the world is using them. And there are companies out there that are valued at hundreds of millions of dollars based on CubeSat technology. So that was really the basis and what led us into this whole arena. And so we now, through the Exomedicine and Kentucky Space and Space Tango and working with Moorhead, we have a number of initiatives that are in play. We've already flown a half a dozen or so experiments to space. We are actually right now in the pipeline. We have work on exomedicine, cancer, diabetes, regenerative medicine, and neurodegenerative diseases, all in the pipeline missions that we're actually designing right now that will begin to launch in the summer of this year. Also, when you see these images, these are not science fiction images. These are actually not. This is not just art that we put up there. These are actually images that we designed with a space artist and several people from NASA, because we wanted to envision in our own mind, just visually, if we were to have an Exomedicine Institute in space that did R&D, bioengineering, biomanufacturing, we fundamentally believed that not only would we learn from going to space different kinds of ways that these physical systems, these biological systems operate that will open up keys on Earth, but that we would be bioengineering and biomanufacturing products in space to be brought back to give us revolutionary new products and perhaps can attack and deal with some of these terrible diseases that we face today for which we have no cures because of the simply different kind of environment. So this was actually designed for us, with us, by NASA and some space artists, so we could help just envision what something like this might look like. And I say it's not science fiction because in about 5 weeks, the first brick of this institute goes to space. In July, via SpaceX 9, we will be launching Tango Lab 1 to the International Space Station, which was designed by Space Tango, Kentucky Space, Twyman's team. Tango Lab 1 is a fully automated R&D and bioengineering laboratory to be placed permanently on the International Space Station. Once that's on station, it basically was built and designed here in Kentucky, that belongs to Space Tango. It will enable us to do potentially hundreds of experiments every year on the International Space Station in this area of exomedicine, both for ourselves and for other customers and clients that we work for. We already have about 6 major companies and organizations that are basically going to lease space on Space Tango. In fact, Twyman is headed to Europe in a couple of weeks to sign a big contract with a company over there. And so that will be the first small brick in this vision of a permanent installation in space to do biomedicine and biomedical research and manufacturing. So again, I don't want you to think this is 20 years from now, 30 years from now. The things that you're talking about today, the things that we're talking about today, the vision that Lieutenant Governor Hampton talked about Kentucky, this is happening right now, today. And we'll actually be having our third Exomedicine conference in La Jolla on June 7th. There are brochures out in the front in our table at the Center for Contemporary Art. I would encourage any of you who can make it out there. It'll be a great event. It's when we bring together all of the people from around the world, in fact, that are interested in exomedicine, people from NASA. We spend one day talking through, we actually limit the attendance so we can actually have a valuable conversation. The lead speaker this year is going to be David Wolf, who's an astronaut and also an MD, and has a lot of interest in looking at 3D cell cultures in space, again, using the space environment to do something we can't do on Earth. So thank you very much for your time. I'm looking forward to the rest of the day, and I'll be around, so if anybody wants to talk, I'll be happy to answer some more questions. Thank you.